After 3 months of waiting, on the 25th of March 2025, we finally got a new and hefty update from Red Barrel's Outlast Trials. This update brought us part 1 of the Under Surveillance event, and due to Amelia's shenanigans, security has been increased at Signala. It seems Murkoff are on edge and need her caught. The Under Surveillance update was prefaced by motion comics that show the lead up to Amelia's plan and how she orchestrated the events I'm going to look at in this video. If you want to see my breakdown of these comics, then the link is up there. But anyway, this update saw security cameras placed around the trial environments, delivering a nasty shock from your ESOP if you're seen and fail to escape the camera's gaze. There were 2 MK challenges named Stash the Contraband, which has reagents, stashing contraband, and Kidnap the Mistress, which had reagents identifying a Lady of the Night and arresting her. But the real draw to this update was part 2 of Under Surveillance, released on the 8th of April 2025, which showed us another chapter in the tense story arc of Amelia Collier, a reagent who has been hurt by Murkoff and is hell-bent on bringing them down, and who has herself become quite the influential figure there at the Signala facility. She got out, and it's all anyone is talking about.
Some days you wake up and shit has changed. We gotta be careful here. Walls got ears and all that. But holy shit, you must have heard, right? Somebody got out.
There are rumors spreading. Fairy stories of some clever reagent slipping out of a trial. Just think about that. About how unlikely that would be. How little sense that would make. You're not stupid, are you? No, not you. Don't believe the lies.
You look upset. Maybe you've heard the rumors about some rat in the walls. Rumors are all they are, and you wouldn't spread some silly rumor.
There are new law documents as a part of this update, and of course we'll get into those as well. There's some interesting internal conflicts going on at Signala, but will our reagent escape or not? Well, let's find out. Please be warned that this video will contain spoilers for the Outlast Trials. So one thing that got added in terms of documents were documents relating to Kress Chemical. You'll remember that in January of 1960, we're currently in April 1960 for reference, one of the doctors from Unit 731, a Dr. Jun Kusumura, brought to the US under paperclip, was brought in for the toxic shock program on the recommendation of MK Ultra director Sidney Gottlieb for Kusumura's guidance on a toxic chemical being sprayed into the trial environments. Kusumura worked between Signala and Los Alamos. He was shown as being inspired by Dr. Wernicke and his experiments into dream therapy. Anyway, in newly leaked documents, Kusumura wrote to Dr. Easterman on the 17th of April 1960 and told him that after 2 toxic shock programs, inspired by consultants from a certain company, Kress Chemical, he recommended that Murkoff request more materials from Kress Chemical, clearly delighted with the results that the toxic shock program had produced. But it'll be interesting to see how this develops into something a little bit bigger, so we'll have to watch this space, I guess. But this document storyline is actually titled Easterman Incommunicado, so let's look at what that means. So incommunicado essentially means not in contact. Ever since Trials launched, we've been seeing Dr. Easterman going a little bit crazy. I mean, he's always been a little bit off, but his decline over the last 7 or 8 months has been quite spectacular. He showed dismay at the Skinner Man potentially being a manifestation of the reagent's view of himself, and he claimed that he respected his patients and that they loved him back. Of course, this was largely due to the fact that he made himself part of their therapy process, but also removed himself far enough from the proverbial pantheon, portraying himself as some sort of voodoo deity. He liked to enhance his imagination by the use of LSD, which led to some pretty profound musings, usually involving the works and thoughts of Carl Jung, and these fed into Easterman's obsession with charismatic aura. But Easterman's unravelling got pretty bad around January when he was spiked with thallium, a toxic metal, at the Signala New Year's party. Then, Easterman found out from Moses Scarfiotti, the Signala architect, that he'd divorced his wife Irene. Lo and behold, he checked, and he had indeed divorced her over 6 months prior, but had absolutely no recollection of that happening. After that, the Amelia thing happened and Easterman was getting antsy. He was terrified of what would happen to them if they found out that a reagent had escaped one of the trials. He started thinking that Murkoff were going to torture him to death. He started to feel like he's losing total control, especially since Clyde Perry was keeping him at a distance from the interrogations around who and where Amelia is. He'd had some reagents drugs and he questioned them, finding out the name Amelia, and he wrote that he can trust no one. But then a conversation took place between Easterman and Avianos. He seemed shocked to learn that reagent 1733, who remember is sadly no longer with us, mentioned the name Amelia ages ago. 1733 also mentioned Moses from the Bible. Avianos stated that Easterman looks like he hasn't slept. Due to Easterman's need for control, he wanted to find Amelia quickly as he feels that he is losing that control. He's still very cautious about who to trust, and doesn't even trust Clyde Perry, but then again I wouldn't trust Clyde either, to be fair. Then Easterman writes about Scarfiotti. Remember that Easterman and Scarfiotti absolutely despise one another. Ever since the first iteration of Trials, called Lathe 1, failed back in 1958, Easterman had suspected of Scarfiotti trying to sabotage him. This, along with 1733 mentioning the name Moses, leads Easterman to a theory. His writings on Moses in this entry of his journal show some pretty dark musings going on in Easterman's head, with him thinking that Scarfiotti is conspiring with Amelia in order to try and destroy him. Conversations would then start to be had over Easterman and his state of mind. But a few days after this, remember I mentioned Dr. Kusamura, that he wrote to Easterman about requesting additional materials from Kress Chemical? Well, Easterman had not responded, leading to Kusamura becoming concerned. In a conversation with Kusamura's translator, Avianos states that chemical testing has halted for now as they have bigger fish to fry, which of course is Amelia's uprising that she's been planning. Kusamura seems to think that with the chemical testing there is an opportunity for additional funding from Los Alamos, but again the translator is stonewalled by Avianos, who is more concerned about the security breach there at the facility. The same day, Avianos is speaking with Clyde Perry, and after mentioning Easterman's stable diet of gin and amphetamines, their conversation ends with Perry suggesting that Easterman take an enforced vacation. Avianos tells Perry that they need to tell Scarfiotti about what's been happening in regards to Amelia and her escape, as he thinks the breach only amounts to some broken radios having been found inside the trials. Easterman, on the other hand, is about to find something out that will shake him to his core. After he saw 1733 say the name Moses, Easterman was convinced that people were conspiring against him. Remember the documents were being leaked into the trials and that Clyde was trying to find out who the leak was? Well, on the 17th of April, Easterman sent a memo out stating that any and all documentation found in the trial environments was to be carbon copied to him, especially documents from and to Scarfiotti, Avianos and Perry. So this means that he's reading everything that his colleagues have been saying about him. But this isn't what concerned him. What concerned him were documents regarding his brother Stanley. So prior to his Murkoff employment, Easterman went to Hong Kong to find out about his brother Stanley's so-called suicide. Easterman couldn't accept that Stanley simply ended himself, with him believing that it was a result of Korean brainwashing, so he tried to find out more by speaking to Korean War veterans. He didn't find out anything substantial, so he returned to the US. One document detailing a conversation between Murkoff's CIA liaison Jameson Lawler and Alice Avianos back in October 1955, about a year and a half after Easterman had joined the Murkoff Corporation. They were talking about Stanley. Lawler discusses them having encountered a potential wrinkle, Stanley's suicide. Well, it turns out that Easterman's belief that Stanley was manipulated into killing himself as a result of Korean brainwashing during the war, Easterman's interest into mental programming, came about as a direct result of this belief.
Dr. Easterman was so upset by the news he heard out of Korea. Some of our boys came back changed, like they were different people. And Easterman thought, well, if you can change people for the worse, why couldn't you change them for the better? I think it's so important to be optimistic.
What Easterman also didn't know until now was that Stanley wasn't even a soldier in the Korean War. He never even stepped foot in Korea because he was an accountant for the Quartermaster Corps. Essentially, the Quartermaster Corps is responsible for the development and acquisition of general supplies, mortuary affairs, and other duties in order to provide combat support to the US Army. Lawler states that Stanley had probably been embellishing slightly in his letters when he wrote home. The consensus is that Easterman needs to keep believing that his brother died as a result of self-inflicted means due to brainwashing, as that will make him more efficient in his job, I guess. They go on to state that as part of Murkoff's background checks, they'd found that Stanley had attempted to end himself on 2 prior occasions, but Easterman did not know about those. They describe Easterman's home life, that their mother was not exactly stable herself, Medical records showed that Mother Easterman was pulling out her children's hair by the handful, and this resulted in acute localized alopecia, which disappeared once they both left home. But back to the present day. Easterman, naturally, doesn't believe a word of this. He shows incredible denial about what he's just read, thinking it's all fabricated and that Stanley was indeed driven to end himself. He is insistent that the therapy works. It's also noted that he was drawing dandelions on the page while scribbling down these words too. As mentioned earlier, Avianos needed to speak with Moses Scarfiotti about the breach. Perry mentions that he thinks someone internal is helping Amelia, and Scarfiotti is very worried that they suspect it's him. They ease his fears, and Perry says that he's got a lead on who is responsible. Scarfiotti naturally tries to suggest this is all Easterman's fault. Moses asks who Amelia is, and Perry says that she's a nobody, someone that got lucky. Avianos mentions additional security being needed inside the trials, and Scarfiotti recommends cameras. He says that this would prevent an increase in manpower, or security, and people wouldn't need to watch their monitors as the cameras would administer an electric shock through the reagent's ESOP units. This would be enough to knock them down or attract attention. This, they hope, would help them identify and capture Amelia. Avianos talks about wanting to make an example out of her, but Scarfiotti wonders if Amelia is still even wearing an ESOP. Avianos poses the question of how she would get it off, unless she has a bone saw or a wrench. Nonetheless, the under surveillance program is authorized for use in the trials. As we know, Clyde interrogated, tortured, and killed Amelia's boyfriend Damon, and this really made Amelia mad. We also saw in the motion comics that Noakes the engineer was helping her by sending out parts she needed inside reagents' ESOP units. These reagents would die in the trials, but their bodies would end up being disposed of on biohazard disposal trucks known as chum buckets. Amelia needed to fix something. A piece of machinery, a meat grinder called an REH, or a reagent equipment harvester, which does exactly what it says. It recycles equipment from dead reagents so that Murkoff can use it again. We learned through another newly leaked document that this machinery was provided through Murkoff's partnership with Liberty Meat Hauling Company. This was the company that would transport the victims of Murkoff after being lured in by their charitable outreach centres. The machinery was able to grind bodies down to a fine liquid paste, and this could be disposed of easier, which prevented the mass burying of bodies in the Arizona desert, and this formed part of a new disposal method known as slurry disposal. Anyway, Amelia had used one of Gooseberry's mannequin children to test the damage the machine would cause a person, and she said that it would be painful, but it should work. Throughout the under surveillance program, Amelia had the reagents listen to her broadcasts on televisions inside the trial environments and collect schematics. The schematics were maps of different environments and, more crucially, schematics of the sleep room terminal, from which reagents select their trials. She was planning to sabotage it. She would hack the sleep room director's radio.
Jesus Christ, this might actually work. But only if we all go at once. There's gaps in Murkoff's security. Place is so awful they think even we wouldn't go there. They underestimate how desperate we are. You're nothing Easterman tells you you are. Just be nothing. Be ready.
She also hacked the shuttle terminals too.
This is Amelia. Listen to me. Look for the date and be ready. Easterman's been preparing you for something incredible. Something painful. Impossible. Even if the only thing you learn in a slaughterhouse is how to be meat. But maybe that's how we get out of here.
Reagents would see her around the trial environment, sabotaging equipment, messing with Murkoff and graffitiing walls with anti-Murkoff messaging. She also left a date, April the 8th.
Wait for my word. Be ready. They're gonna pay for what they did to us. You only have to hold out a little while longer. Look for the date. If we all go at once, they can only kill so many of us. I hope you're hearing this. I hope I'm not throwing this all away.
This was a fourth wall breaking thing as part 2 of Under Surveillance launched on the 8th of April. But with everything set on what in-game is April 21st, Amelia's plan is a go.
We don't have long. If you're gonna make a run, do it now. It's finally time. Wake up, get the others, and go. Tell whoever you can. The more of us go, the better chances we all have. You can use the trial board to call a garbage shuttle. It can get you out. Security.
Waking up in the sleep room, the reagent leaves their room and all hell has broken loose. Items are strewn all over the place, there's clearly been some rioting going on. Murkoff's security is standing, watching, or running around. Amelia has modified the sleep room terminal and it offers a question: to escape or remain. And upon clicking to escape, the reagent boards the shuttle. Amelia has sabotaged it so that the shuttle takes the reagent to somewhere different, taking advantage of the security flaws in the escalation program's shuttle switching system. The reagent boards the chum bucket and rides it as it takes the bodies down to be disposed of, but Amelia says there's a problem. She says that Murkoff are onto them and the shuttle stops. The reagent is now heading away from the lathe facility and towards biohazard disposal. It's pitch black down there, but thankfully the reagent has their night vision and they proceed through the tunnels. Hearing the screams of reagents, our reagent continues on and spots other reagents down there too, some of them having gone insane. They come across the large meat grinder, the REH, and they need to get it powered up. Managing to do so, increasing pressure and fueling it, the reagent gets on the belt and is fed into the machine. Amelia was right. It's a painful process, but the reagent survives and gets spat out with no ESOP or night vision, since those items have been harvested. The reagent sees another reagent searching a body part on the ground for something. Making their way through the area, they see something disturbing: a heavy X-pop eating a corpse. Moving to a large open area with all sorts of props in there from different trials, the reagent finds a key on the ground but is chased by the heavy X-pop from before. But let's discuss this heavy X-pop. Those of you who have been following the story somewhat will be familiar with Doris Ritter, the shadowy dame who sells contraband in the sleep room in the form of amps, which allow certain abilities. Doris had arrangements with staff at Signala which saw her not having to enter into the trials.
I got a system. Keeps me out of the trials. Business relationships. Some of these poor schmucks on the Murkoff tick got problems of their own or things they need.
In conversation, Doris mentioned her former lover, Henrietta.
This friend I had, Henrietta. We were gonna get out of here together. But then something changed. Little by little, this person I'm risking my life for, something's different. What fucks me up about it, I don't know if she changed or I did. I guess Henrietta got out one way or the other.
In previous updates, we learned that Henrietta went into a trial, got grievously injured, and was subjected to hormone baths and limb lengthening therapy, causing her to be reclassified as a heavy X-pop. Henrietta, due to her relationship with Doris and her strong will, meant that she wasn't able to be brought under the charismatic sway of the Prime assets. She attacked, or rather attempted to attack, Leland Coyle and sustained horrific injuries, being assumed deceased and was disposed of in the sewers. But she's not dead. Not by a long shot, even if staff at Signala insisted that she was. Anyhow, this is Henrietta Grubbs. She's insane, she's angry, she's lonely, and she's still got one thing, and that is her love for Doris. She constantly cries out for Doris, checking bodies and barrels in the hope that Doris has not been killed. Whilst being chased by Henrietta, the reagent powers up different gates, including one in an area with a toxic chemical. Powering up the exit, the reagent moves on through it and escapes Henrietta. The way out is close, very close in fact, and the reagent sees the light. They're in some sort of old mining shaft. There are barrels containing radioactive material in there, but the reagent emerges into the scorching sunlight of Arizona. Signala is up on the mountainside in the distance. The reagent has come a long way for their escape, and they make their break for it, disappearing into the desert, and Amelia hopes that the reagent will tell the outside world about the things Murkoff are doing there at Signala. Whether or not this has the desired effect remains to be seen. Back at Signala though, the staff are panicking and memos are being sent out alerting staff that an unknown number of reagents have escaped into Signala. Lethal force was permitted to the Murkoff security staff who were ordered to capture or kill escaping reagents. As a result of Amelia's uprising and the subsequent escapes, Scarfiotti and Perry are going in on each other, with Perry accusing Scarfiotti of being complacent since Amelia escaped one of the trials that he designed. Scarfiotti responds by saying that both Perry and Avianos had kept all this from him in the first place. Avianos stops the two arguing and says that they need to stop the bleeding. but even at Signala there's a chain of command, and Scarfiotti says that the punch cards for the transit system are in Easterman's office, and of course, he's barricaded himself inside. Avianos expresses the need to get to him. That same morning though, Perry, along with Scarfiotti and Murkoff's security staff, bust their way into Easterman's office and find him naked, covered in blood and feces, and screaming about all sorts of things including the Skinner Man and the name Joel. They physically restrain him and he has a seizure. He was moved to a hospital bed within the facility, and Perry resumes his search for Amelia. The following day, Avianos speaks with Easterman. He tells her that he knows that she was lying to him, about his wife Irene and about Stanley, about his work and the therapy. She tells him that she knows he's not crazy, but mentions some of the things that he was saying. She wants to know where the punch cards for the shuttle system are, but Easterman first demands to be freed. He tells Avianos that he knows both her and Scarfiotti are setting him up to take the blame for Amelia's uprising, but he blackmails Avianos, telling her that he knows all about her relationship with Lawler. He says that if he goes down, he's taking her down with him. Later, on that same day, Perry is speaking with Avianos, and she says that they're going to have to tell the board what happened, as they've lost too many staff, who were killed, and far too many reagents, who escaped or died trying, for the board not to notice. Perry asks if the board will shut them down. Avianos then starts to laugh, and says that the board know how much Murkoff are bringing in through their activities there at Signala, and they'll just want someone, no matter who it is, to be accountable for this mess. Perry mentions pointing the finger at the person that authorized the shuttle switching system for the escalation trial program, and that would likely be Moses Scarfiotti, although Scarfiotti did show his reluctance to accept the escalation therapy shuttle switching system, deeming it a security risk. But it's likely that Murkoff won't care about that. It's very likely that Scarfiotti is going to get the blame here. Avianos mentions that if Perry can sort this mess out, then he'll likely be rewarded with a promotion. Given that Perry's portrait at Mount Massive shows him in his role until 1961, which is coming up soon, he's either sorted it out by maybe capturing Amelia, or he was killed. But either way, it's all heating up, ready for season 3. In regard to Easterman, the following day on the 23rd of April, he writes in his journal. He seems coherent, focused. He quotes Joel chapter 2, which explains the rambling and his saying the name Joel whilst being restrained. For reference, Joel chapter 2 describes the Day of the Lord being a time of judgment and devastation, where an army would invade Judah after they had turned their backs on God. An army of locusts, a fighting army, would attack, and God issued a promise of restoration if his chosen people turned back to him. And this is reflected in what Easterman writes next, as he laments the things that he's lost. His family and the people that he only wants to help, the reagents, have escaped from him. He writes as if his old self is dead, gone. He writes with a newfound clarity and says that since he's been destroyed and still lives, that he can do anything, and that the trials are just the beginning. Since Easterman likes to view himself as a sort of god, this I guess links into what he quoted from Joel, and its implications are significant here, as he appears to be talking about God's wrath. This tells me that Easterman may be planning to go even farther and deeper in the therapy. Lastly, the figures report that Signala lost 23 ex-pops, 27 security staff, 4 of the science staff, 8 maintenance staff, and an unknown number of reagents. The report talks about an extremely dangerous ex-pop being loose in Signala, and one can assume that they are talking about Henrietta here. Perhaps we'll start seeing her in the trial environments now. The Avianos-Lawler love affair has a new development too, as Lawler was scheduled to visit for a conference. Avianos cancelled his conference though, due to what happened at Signala. Lawler says that he'd already told Sidney Gottlieb, and he was expecting a report on the Kress Chemicals. Avianos says that's been put on hold. After what Easterman blackmailed her with, it appears that she's trying to be more careful about her relationship with Lawler. To finish, we got one additional document which talks about the psychosis gas which is pumped into the trial shuttles, causing the reagents to hallucinate. Something that Amelia has warned the reagents not to inhale.
You need to try to stay awake in the shuttle. Don't inhale any more gas than you absolutely have to. You should be able to go 2 minutes holding your breath without passing out. Keep your head straight. Listen for my word. I promise you, I'm trying.
It says that after light but prolonged exposure to this chemical, Signala staff may themselves experience psychosis. An observational blackout period is suggested during preconditioning, which occurs during transit to the trials themselves. You'll notice that the guards that stand outside the trial shuttle now wear gas masks in order to prevent this exposure. It then finishes by stating that any staff who are significantly compromised by the psychosis gas will be considered a candidate for the experimental population. This was something that was mentioned in the XPOP classification files for the Pusher. These gas fiends are known to be former members of staff who succumbed to chemical exposure and were driven to psychosis. But anyway, that's it for this amazing update to the Outlast Trials. As said before, if you want to check out any of my other Trials videos, such as this video where I covered all the Season 1 lore into one long video, then go and check that out. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts down below about what Season 3 might have in store. But for now, take care and I'll see you in the next one.